Okay, so almost every garment that I sew, if not every single garment I sew, I will always prefer to put in an invisible zipper because they look so much nicer. And when they close up, all that you'll see is the little top zip. That's it. Everything else is covered, and I much prefer that. Hold on a second, we have New York sirens. It's my life, you guys. Every day, New York sirens. Alright, they're far enough now. So, if you're looking at the front of the zipper, basically flip that over to the other side and you can pull the zipper. I don't think I'm close enough to you. Here. There you go. So this is the right side. You want to flip it on the other side, and you can see if you push the zipper out that there's fabric here. I am literally going to take the iron on the cotton setting, and I'm going to sew right on top of this to sew this, or to steam this flat. Don't worry about melting it. I've been doing this for years, and I have still yet to melt a zipper. So just keep pushing that out. Be careful not to burn yourself. It's very easy to burn yourself when you're doing this. And you just want to iron that flat. And it kind of helps to push it down with your finger and then actually push the iron outwards into the side. So if you need to run it through a few times, just so you can get it really flat. This one's ironing really well. Okay. Just iron it flat, flat, and out. Okay, this side's looking pretty good. Okay, now I'll let you see what it looks like. Whew, hot. Okay, so let me show you so you can see the difference. Here's what it looked like before, so this is the side I haven't done yet, and this is after pressing. So flip it to the other side. This one still needs to be pressed. This one, oh sorry, this one is pressed. This is the one that needs to be pressed. So you want that flat because you're literally going to be stitching as close to that seam as you can to get it completely closed and to have a beautiful zipper when you're done. I'm going to do the other side. Gosh, it's like a siren party today. It's Easter weekend. People can't be getting that crazy. Okay. Just keep pushing that out. And the trick with this really is to iron not just flat and straight, but to push outward while you're going. And don't be afraid to put a little bit of force behind it. I'm pressing pretty hard on this right now. Ouch! Just burned my finger. Always happens when I'm doing a zipper. I've gotten so used to that I just expect it every time now. Okay. Really do make sure that you're pressing outwards, because if you don't press outwards, you'll just be pressing that seam closed again. And that's what you don't want to do. So press out. Lovely. Getting a little bit of a face steaming here as well, opening up my pores. Alright, my zipper is ready to go. Let me move this stuff and we'll get back to sewing. Okay, welcome back. Now, where we stopped before we pressed our invisible zipper, we were on step 4. And step 4 is basically having you do a basting for your zipper and then a final seam to close up your back seam. Now, because I'm doing the invisible zipper, I'm not going to do the basting. What I am going to do, and I'll show you this on the piece 4 pattern, there are 2 reasons why I know I have the correct seam. The back seam, which I'm stitching together. And that's, firstly, I can see the notches here. So this is for the back, these 3 notches. Anytime on patterns that you typically have 2 notches or 3 notches, it's to let you know that it is a back piece. And you'll find that on shoulder pieces too. So they'll always give you something to mark as the back. So that notch, that big notch, is right here on both of my fabric pieces. So I have right sides together with my big notches, and I'm going to stitch from there to the end. So I'm going to pin that now. And then the other way you can tell if you're someone who prefers to look at the paper, you can see looking at step 4 that the higher part of the pattern is going to be on the outside. So just make sure that your shorter part of your pattern, that those 2 pieces are right sides together. Either way that you prefer, or if you want to do both because you're new to sewing, that will tell you if you have the correct sections together. So I'm going to pin this from the notch down. Put 1 pin here. It's a bigger piece. Now this one I'm going to do slightly differently. It doesn't have the tilt like the other pieces did. It doesn't have a sharp tilt. It has a slight one. So I'm going to actually go ahead and pin that notch together, and then I'm going to go ahead and match up my seams at the very bottom because I don't want to have issues trying to get a nice hem on this later. So I would rather fit the piece with those 2 pins already in. So now I know that that is where I'm going to end up and that all of this fabric needs to fit together in between those sections. So let me just, right? Now that's laying a little bit better. And then I would advise you to start in the middle of those 2 pieces and then kind of put together larger sections before you do all of your pinning. I wouldn't advise anybody to pin straight down on almost anything. Try to match up your seams as best as you can and then pin as needed. So you can see I break it out into sections. Here's a section, pin here. Here's a section, pin here. Here's a section, pin here. Always aim from the outer ends to the inner parts. I don't need many more pins than this, but if you do, go ahead and put them in there. Maybe you have slippery fabric, or maybe you're a beginning seamstress. If you need to put 50 pins in, then you go ahead and put 50 pins in. Okay, move my sewing machine over here. For the record, I don't usually have this many sirens going off in one day. This is a very special case. It's kind of making me wonder if there's a fire somewhere. Alright, now I'm going to sew this 5/8 from the notch all the way down to the bottom. Just like you did on the front pieces, fill as you go to make sure that you don't have any extra fabric there that you're not supposed to. And also with pieces this big, you'll want to keep readjusting as you go so that it doesn't get bunched up in the back of the machine, and so that it lays flatly as you're taking it through. That's more important the bigger the pieces are that you're working with. I'm not going to press that open yet. You can if you want to, I'm just not going to. Now to put in my zipper. So the way that they would have had you do it, you would have had this basted. So that would have been closed up by now. I am not doing that. You grab my zipper. So the way that I do my zippers, I look at the seam that it is that I want to create, and then I hold the zipper as if it were going to be closed. So this is how it should work once it's in and together. And then I actually take it and flip it out so that I know which side needs to be sewn. So I know that if I sew this like this, when it closes up, it's going to be like this, and that my zipper will be facing the correct way. So put your zipper down as if it's a functioning garment, then take your zipper, flip it to where it has to be for that, and then you just aim your zipper from the top, and I start to pin just one side. That's important. Now if you need to measure this or mark this, you can. I know that this is about 5/8 inch, so I'm not going to bother measuring it or marking it. And for me, it's also, in particular, not a big deal because the back is almost always where I need less fabric because of the actual shape of my body. So I'm just going to start pinning this in. Trying to roughly make that 5/8 seam. And now I'll show you on the camera up close. So this is what this looks like. So that's roughly 5/8, and I'm just pinning it, and I just started the zipper from the top, and I'm just going to pin it like that until I get to the bottom of the zipper. And if you're worried that you're pinning it in incorrectly, just remember to fold it as if you were wearing it, and then check to make sure that your zipper is facing facing outward where it should be. So just fold it and check it. Okay. Let me keep pinning this. I'll say for the record too, whenever I'm putting a zipper in like this, I don't even usually pin it. I've done so many of them now, I usually just go ahead and run it through the machine and I just freehand it. But if you're new to sewing, I would definitely not recommend that you freehand a zipper. Okay. And now I'm getting to my closed seam. I'm just going to keep going, even past that. So just open out your seam and then keep going on the inside as you were. And you'll want to pin, say, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches into the seam there. And then the rest of this I'm just going to let hang for now. So, zipper is pinned and ready. I have to switch out my foot for my zipper foot. One of the best things that my grandma ever taught me when I was starting to learn to sew was to keep all of the important machine bits in the bag. Never ever take them out of the bag. Anytime that you're not using them, that's where they should be. And I'm just going to check this. Yep. So I need that to be on this side. I'm not going to talk about the zipper foot because your machine is probably different from mine anyways. If you need help finding the zipper foot, look for your manual and actually go to the glossary and check for the zipper foot, and they should have it labeled and tell you which piece it is. Now, I'm going to change the width of my stitch because I want a long basting stitch. So I have the, or excuse me, I shouldn't say the width, it's actually technically the length. So I'm changing the length to, on my machine, 5.0, which is the longest stitch that I can get, because I want to baste this in first and try it on later to make sure that it fits. Oh, and this is important. 1 second, sirens. Again. Okay, so when you baste this, most zipper instructions will have you actually start here and baste this down. I don't do that because I don't like how bulky this is in the seam that I have to fold later. So I start right at the top of the zipper and I stitch right next to that plastic part where the actual zipper starts. And then once I have my zipper in and it's stitched permanently and I'm happy with it, I will come in and I will cut that off. But I'm not going to do that now because it's easier to sew it in place with it on top. So start right next to the plastic part and stitch your basting stitch right there. careful whenever you start stitching on the inside. Make sure that you are only going through the fabric that you're supposed to. Okay, I'm feeling to make sure that I do just have one layer. Alright. Alright, that's good. Take that out. Then before you go stitching the other side, go ahead and flip it out. Check your zipper. I can tell whenever I close this up that this is indeed going the correct way, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to do what I did the first time again. So I'm going to lay this flat as if I were going to close this up and use it. I'm going to make sure my zipper is facing the way that it would once it was closed, which is like this. Okay. And if you need to, you can actually zip it too. If you want to zip it up and do it that way, you can. I'm going to zip mine up just a little bit. Okay. So once my zipper closes, this is what that zipper will look like. Which means that whenever I sew this to this right side of this fabric, it has to go like this. So I am going to go ahead and match that up at the top, gauging roughly my 5/8, and then I'm going to pin that. Okay, and I actually want to pin this the other way. You don't have to do that, that's just, I always pin that way, because it's easier, it's faster. So I know that this is the correct way. And then we'll just start pinning this all the way down like I did the other one. And when I start stitching this, I'll need the pins to actually go this way. If we had a dress that actually had a waistline seam, we would be doing this a little bit differently. I'll have to do a separate dress pattern video to show you how to do that. Because in that particular case you would need to make sure that when your zipper closes your seams match. Fortunately with this dress, we don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to baste this down to basically where I basted the other one. Same place. Okay. Make sure you are only grabbing one side of the fabric and only stitching what you're supposed to. Make sure you still have a basting stitch on, and then start your basting stitch. sure whenever you stitch up here that you stop at the plastic piece. You're going to be trimming this off later, so don't stitch that. Make sure you just trim right next to the plastic. Alright, there we go. Now the tricky part is just a day of sirens. Tricky part is getting your zipper closed through that seam you just did. There we go. You definitely want to do this. Go ahead and zip up your zipper. Be careful, since you pressed your zipper out, make sure to zip up slowly, because if you zip up quickly, because this has been pressed so flat, you could actually rip your fabric, so be careful. Zip slowly, zip slowly. You can feel a little bit of resistance there, so I'm going to check my fabric. Okay. Zip slowly, zip slowly. Okay, there. See how pretty that is? Beautiful. I don't know why anyone would sew without an invisible zipper. Unless it's a jacket or a sleeping bag or something like that, I don't know why you'd ever want anything else. That's so pretty. And you can see too up here where this is going to be trimmed off. That will be where you're going to have your folded in seam, so it should look like that when you're done. Or if you want, you can also install a hook and eye at the top if you feel more comfortable with that, and then you can just zip that up to meet your hook and eye. A lot of that is just personal preference, but either way, your zipper is very pretty. Now I am going to leave this basted for now. I want to try it on later and make sure that it fits, because like I said before, my back is very small, so a lot of times I have to take in fabric there, and that usually means readjusting my zipper a little bit. So I'm going to leave that as is for now. Okay, next step. So putting in our zipper took care of step 5. Now we're at step 6. And I'm, before I forget, going to take off my zipper foot and go ahead and put back on my regular foot, because sometimes I forget about it and then I am stuck trying to figure out why my seam looks wonky. Put it back, because my grandmother trained me well. Back into the baggie so that I never lose it and I always know exactly where it is. And then I'll put it back in my little sewing caddy over here. Alright, step 6. Stitch middle back 5 sections to side edges of back. So that was our back we just did, so we're going to grab that piece 4 again. Let me move my machine out of the way. Lay this here for reference. Right side's up. And then I'll grab my piece 5. That's this one right here. Okay. These are my piece 5s. And you're going to pin the right sides together. And on this one you can tell which side that you're supposed to do by looking at the shape. See these two? And then you can also look to make sure that your notch is matched up. So there's my notch. And we're all set to stitch that. or I should say we're all set to pin that. And this is a pretty straight piece, so you don't need to pin it too vigorously. This one does have a bit of a turnout, so I'm going to go ahead and match that. That's right here and right here. Okay, perfect. I'm doing the same thing that I did earlier, where I match up the ends. I'm going to put 2 pins down here. And then I'm going to rearrange this so that I make sure all the fabric is fitted in, but my hem ends in the same place on both pieces. Okay, pin it in the middle, and then pin those middle sections so that everything gets distributed evenly, and then pin those middle sections. Okay, this is good to stitch. As I said before, put in more pins if you need them. I don't need that many because I've been sewing a long time. Also, my fabric is not slippery. If I have slippery fabric, I will use as many pins as are on that pin cushion. Now, I turned my machine off and then back on, and that's to reset this stitch. So if you remember when we put our zipper stitch in, we had a basting stitch on the machine. So make sure if you still have your basting stitch that you fix that back to your regular stitch. And this is going to be your regular 5/8 stitching again. Now this is a big piece, so keep checking to make sure that you only have your 2 pieces of fabric. check your seam. Make sure everything looks just dandy. Yep, it's a nice clean seam. Now I'm going to pin the other side. Okay. So lay it back out, right side's up, so you can match your seam. You're going to be matching this square shape with your other square shape here, and then you can also check and know that you have your notches together, so that's correct.